Hello everyone. Today I want to talk about swinging a sword. Okay, so for those of you that have been following my channel, I've done lots of videos on medieval combat. I've been fighting at a competitive level for about 18 years. So I've posted videos in the past of both of techniques that I do and of me actually fighting. I did a video about 2 years ago called the 7 power generators. If you search my channel name and that title, 7 power generators, you should be able to find that video. In that video, I very briefly talked about the very basic beginner technique for swinging the sword. And in this video, I kind of want to go back and focus on that one thing. So this is really intended for somebody that has never picked up a sword, never swung anything. Now you might say, hey, I've swung a baseball bat. Okay. So one of the things to understand with swinging a baseball bat is, yeah, you're swinging the bat, but there's nobody that's trying to interrupt your motion. Okay, so you swing all the way through, and there's no follow-up shot, right? You're not trying to make a second swing. Okay, and a lot of times your swing is not going to be interrupted. So if you're swinging a sword, you might be intending to hit a head, but then somebody sticks a shield or basically throws another sword in your path, and now all of a sudden your motion has been interrupted. So what do you do from there? How do you recover? How do you continue? Okay, so in this video I want to talk about one of the very basic techniques for swinging a sword. Okay, so most likely if you're doing this for the first time, you're not going to be swinging a steel sword like this. You're going to be probably swinging a simulator like this. This is a rattan simulator. It's got rattan on the inside, covered by tape on the outside to make it look good, and also to protect the wood. But the nice thing about this, it is balanced like a real sword. It's got the same weight, about 2.5 pounds, right? So same deal here. This is balanced somewhere about there, about 3 or 4 inches down the blade. So this is balanced the same way. So it's going to move very similar to a sword. So you're probably going to be working with something like this, or you might be working with a buffer, right? So this has wood on the inside, and then it's padded on the outside, and then wrapped with tape. It's got a balance point a little further down, right? Not quite halfway down, because there is some extra weight back here in the form of additional padding, but like this one over here is a little further back. It is light enough up here, so you can still move it around and rotate it like a real sword. Okay, so in this video I want to just talk about the very basics. How do you swing a sword? Well, the technique is similar to swinging a bat or throwing a football. Okay, so recently I was teaching my 10-year-old son how to throw a football. Okay. So the basic technique I was teaching him, right, is basically, you've got your right foot back over here, hip goes first, right, that creates tension, right, then your elbow closes, right, so now your chest muscles come across your chest, okay, and then you extend your arm, and it goes basically right down the middle, okay, so it's hip, elbow, arm, okay, so hip, elbow, arm, okay, so that's the technique that I generally teach to people swinging a sword for the very first time. So with the sword, right, and you can start right on your shoulder, right, so it's hip, elbow, arm, okay, hip, elbow, arm. If the sword is light enough, hip, elbow, arm, you can recover straight back to your shoulder. If your sword is heavier, right, hip, elbow, arm, and then just let it, just let it come, basically pass through. It's called a pass through, where you just pull it down and you can reset it back on your shoulder. So hip, elbow, arm. You can practice this to either side, right? Because I can go hip, elbow, arm, and basically I can bring the cut in from that side, right? Hip, elbow, arm, that side. I can bring it right down the middle. Hip, elbow, arm. So, hey everyone, I wanted to cut in here and show you guys the foot positioning. I pointed the camera a little further down. So if the sword's in my right hand and I'm leading with my left foot, okay, what's happening is the left foot is generally pointed at my opponent. Okay, so wherever he moves, that's where I point my foot to, right? And the reason for that is because that's generally the direction I'm going to be moving in, okay? If you have your foot sideways, one of the things that I found is that if you move forward, you can kind of roll your ankle. So that's why I like to point my foot at my opponent, and that's regardless of if I'm leading with the sword leg. Same thing, I'll point it to my opponent. Okay. So for now, let's say I'm leading with my shield leg. Okay. So that's pointing at my opponent. My right leg will basically be at the 45. Okay. So I'll do it from here so you guys can see it. Okay. Okay. So this is a very balanced position. So if somebody moves in on me, if I get pushed, I'm going to be balanced. I generally try to avoid two things. I try to avoid having my feet together, right, because now I'm off balance. And I try to avoid having either 1 foot or 2 feet in the air for too long, right? Because if my foot is in the air, I'm off balance, right? I'm not as well balanced. If I'm stepping forward, right, while I'm making that motion, for that 1 second that my foot's in the air, I have the least amount of control. So generally when we fight, we make small steps, or I make small steps anyway, because that keeps my feet on the ground. Okay, now if I'm out of range, you know, I can also make bigger steps, but I'm also being conscious of where my opponent is, how long, you know, like how much time do they have to close in on me and push me, you know, either, you know, with the shield or with their weapons or whatever. So just be aware that when your feet are on the ground, that's when you have the most control, okay? And if your feet is, while your foot's in the air, okay, that's when you have the least amount of control, okay? So from this position here, just to give you guys a better view, okay? So hip, elbow, arm, okay? Hip, elbow, arm. If you notice, the sword is coming right down the middle, okay? Nothing wide, okay? So hip, elbow, arm, and it can go to either side, hip, elbow, arm. If I'm going to lead with my sword leg, right, what I generally have to do is I have to cock my shoulder back, okay? Because from this position here, like even if my shoulder's a little bit forward, I've got so much play in my hip that I can still get the sword moving. If I'm leading with this leg, now everything's forward. What I need to do here is I need to cock my shoulder back, okay? So from here, now I've got, you know, I can see I still got a little bit of room to swing, okay? So here I'm leading with the sword leg. Got to really cock that shoulder back so that I'm still doing hip, elbow, arm. Hip, elbow, arm. So actually, before we move on to the next step, let's talk about fighting with the shield. So one of the things to understand when you're fighting with the shield, okay, the shield has to stay in front of you when you swing. So when you go hip, elbow, arm, right, that's got to stay hip, elbow, arm. That's got to stay in front of you, right? Hip, elbow, arm, even if it goes to the other side. So in order for that to happen, what has to happen is that as you swing this arm has to actually come forward, okay? Because the tendency is that as this arm comes forward, you see how this arm wants to rotate back? Okay, we have to correct for that, okay? So I don't want that to happen, right? Because that's going to look like this, right? That's going to look like that, and that's going to get me dead, okay? So we don't want that to happen. So in order to correct for that, what I will do is when I swing that sword, so I go hip, elbow, arm, this hand comes forward, okay? So the two hands actually meet, okay? So I'll do it from this side. You can see how it's a subtle motion, okay? So even if I'm going to that side, so that shield stays in the middle, okay? So this is a good place to start. Now, as you get to a more advanced level, you may not want to start with your sword back here, but it's the same thing. Even if I'm fighting here, right? Because here now the sword is also defensive, right? I'm doing the same thing. It's just that I'm throttling how much power I'm pulling from each section. So in the technique, right, in the very basic technique where I'm going hip, elbow, arm, most of the power generation is down here, right? Hip, elbow, arm. In the technique where I'm here, I'm still giving it a little bit of torque from my hip, right? And my arm is coming, you know, my chest is actually almost in that forward position, but not quite all the way. So most of the power is really coming from my arms, and then I'm bringing in other power generators. Like for example, I'm using the leverage in my hand to create a pop at the end as I'm throwing the shot. So the point here is that even though this is a good place to start, right? Hip, elbow, arm, it's going to allow somebody that's brand new to get into a fight. And this is somebody that anybody can use regardless of the size. So even if you are a small girl that only weighs 95 pounds, okay, there's more strength in your legs than is in my arms, okay? So your legs are gonna be stronger than my arms. So if I'm sitting here trying to arm the shot, you know, using mostly my arms in the shots, and you're using you're throwing your whole legs into the shots, you're going to be able to generate almost as much power, if not just as much power, as I am, because you're drawing more power from your legs. Okay, what I'm doing in my case, if I'm fighting with the sword here, is I'm sacrificing some of this power from my lower legs to have that additional sword defense. And later on, as you get into more advanced fighting, you may want to also start doing that. Now, here's the thing. This is not to say, right? This is not to say that this is just the beginner technique where you're going hip, elbow, arm, right? Hip, elbow, arm. That's not to say that that's the beginner technique, and this is the advanced technique where we're just, you know, just using a little bit of torque from our core over here, a little bit of a twitch from the hip, and mostly arming the shots. That's not to say that one is a beginner technique or just a beginner technique and one is the advanced technique, because at a more advanced level of fighting, if I am in the guard like this, standing in front of you, right, like this, right, what do I look like? I look like I'm ready to fight, right? I look like I'm ready to launch a shot, right? I look like I'm really ready to do something. If I drop back and throw the sword on my shoulder, what does it look like now, right? Especially if I lower my shield a little bit, right? So I'm here, I drop back, I look like I'm relaxing, which I will do during a fight, right? You know, because you don't basically fight non-stop, full throttle. You know, usually you'll go in, you'll throw, you know, a combination, you'll back out, you'll reassess, you'll see where you're at with your fight, you try to assess how your opponent is fighting. So I may come in, you know, throw a shot, right, and then step back, relax, okay? So this looks like it's relaxed, you know, then I may come back in, throw that shot, come back, relax, and then all of a sudden from here, boom, right? So going back to my shoulder, what that's going to do is it's going to change the speed at which the shot comes in. It's going to change the tempo. It'll change angles, because now I might be adding a step to it. Okay, so again, adding a step is a power generator, which you can, you know, as you get more comfortable with this technique, right, of hip, elbow, arm, eventually it can become a step, because you're doing all the same things, right? Except now you're actually stepping forward. Now you're changing the range. You can also change the angle. Okay, you know, again, you could do it to either side. Okay, so that very base technique of hip, elbow, arm, right? And you basically it's got to come right down the middle. You don't want it coming wide. Okay, you don't want that, because that gets your arm chopped off, right? And it's a slower shot. The fastest shot is always going to be a straight line. So I don't want to make a big roundhouse to your head. I want to make a straight shot straight to your head, right? Straight shot to your leg, okay? Straight shot. So straight shots are always going to be faster, okay? So you want to throw straight shots. So you can start off with hip, elbow, arm, and eventually that can also come in with the step. So now you're really unleashing that hip. So whereas before you were getting only, you know, you're getting only so much power here, well, now when you bring that step forward, now you're carrying even more power forward. Okay, so, and again, the main thing here, one of the main things I was wanting to say is, this is not necessarily just a beginner technique. It's a tool in your toolbox. Okay, because like I said, most of the time I tend to fight with the sword forward, because it's also defensive, right? But then at some point I can drop back. Okay, most people will think I'm relaxing, and most of the times I am relaxing, right? or drop back out of range. But then from here, boom, I could just throw a shot straight from the shoulder. And because it's changing tempo, changing speed, changing angle, you know, it's a very powerful shot that comes in very unexpectedly, okay? So, something for you guys to think about. Let me know what you guys think of the technique. So again, technique is hip, elbow, arm, right? And it's straight down the middle, right? Just like if you're throwing a football, okay? Right? Hip, elbow, arm. Hip, elbow, arm, okay? And I realize, yes, there's other, if you look at a quarterback throw a football, sometimes they're doing other things. Maybe they're standing to the side here, other stuff like that. But again, this is a very basic technique where you start from here, right? And then, you know, you start from the very basic hip, elbow, arm, and then later on you can, you know, you can add other things, right? You can modify it, you can change it. But now you have that very basic understanding that the power starts from the ground up, right? Starts from the legs, comes up through your core, goes out through your arms, okay? So drop some comments, let me know what you guys think, and I'll talk to you soon.